What is going on, guys, and welcome to another video. Now, let's be real, some cards in Clash Royale deserve better. They get ignored, underused, or completely outclassed. Today I'm calling out 5 cards I think they need a buff and giving my version of what those buffs should be. If you agree, let me know in the comments, and if you disagree, also let me know in the comments. The cards we're going to be talking about today is going to be the Night Witch, Phoenix, Lava Hound, Spirit Empress, and Battle Healer. Starting off with the Night Witch. The Night Witch honestly has a lot of problems going for her. She summons bats every 5 seconds, which is pretty slow. She's too fragile and too easily shut down by cheap spells or just splash cards in general that can easily just get rid of her. For the most part, a 1% usage rate is pretty abysmal, putting her on very low tiers in terms of usability and win rate. So she needs a very big buff to herself and also the bats to have any meaningful impact in the meta. So some of those buffs should be a 10 to 12% increase to her HP, making her less vulnerable to spells and swarm units that can easily take care of her. Also reducing the bat spawn timer from 5 seconds to 4 seconds, so you can spawn bats more often, making her a lot more viable. And also on death, instead of spawning 4 bats, she should spawn 6 bats and also make them a little bit tankier. Maybe an extra 10% on the HP and damage of the bats would make them higher value, and also just put a lot more emphasis for the enemy to actually get rid of these bats and commit a lot more elixir. I think these changes could definitely make the Night Witch a lot more viable and really increase her usability in the meta, and it would be really awesome to see the Night Witch back in the meta because it's been years since she's been meta. It's really sad to see because when the Night Witch came out, she was super broken and I was playing her a ton. It's a very fun unit to actually play. I think if they actually put some effort into it, they can make the Night Witch viable again. The next unit we're going to be taking a look at is the Phoenix. Phoenix has one of the most awesome mechanics in the game. It's very hard to balance. I understand Supercell has not wanted to touch the Phoenix in a really long time just because it's a very difficult card for them to balance. Phoenix just remains extremely underutilized compared to other flying troops, partly because its utility and threat are inconsistent. You drop it, maybe it lives, maybe it doesn't, and the egg gets zapped or ignored. Its win rate and usage rate remains at 0%. It is one of the worst cards in Clash Royale. I will still try and use it from time to time, but I use it because I really enjoy the card, not because it's a really good meta pick. It's a card that if you see someone on ladder using, it's probably because they really just enjoy the card and they know there's much better options. They just choose to play it just to keep the card alive. I think there's a lot of things they could do to this card to make it a lot more viable, and one of those things is a slight HP buff of 8 to maybe 10% would be pretty good. So Phoenix is more likely to survive its first hits and get its egg off. Also, the egg spawn speed should be a little bit faster. Right now it's currently around 4.3 seconds, should be maybe around 3.4 to 3.5. It would make the Phoenix spawn a little bit quicker, making the rebirth a lot more impactful and actually giving it a much higher chance of actually spawning, which is the whole point of playing Phoenix. Is that potential counter push and continuation of your push is really important to have. If you're not able to do that, the egg being shut down by pretty much anything, even a speck of dust on the map, will just kill the egg. It's just really not worth it. You're not really getting a whole lot of damage from the Phoenix anyway to really counteract that, so it really needs a few other buffs as well. Maybe the egg could have a little bit of an AoE damage, kind of like poison, but in a very small controlled level to maybe help it be a little bit better and maybe give it more value. Maybe if they did that, they could actually increase the Phoenix to 5 elixir, giving them those big buffs. It would actually be pretty cool, and maybe keep the Phoenix alive. Maybe that's the key, just push it into a different tier. For the most part, most people, when a card goes up in elixir, it tends to just die. I think if you buff a card enough, the extra elixir cost will be completely justified, and Phoenix is probably one of those cards that if it were 5 elixir, even when it was broken before, if it was an extra elixir, it would probably be a lot more balanced. But I would like to know in the comments below what you guys think. The next card we're going to be talking about is the Lava Hound. So the Lava Hound is one of these cards that's just so nostalgic to most people, but the card just has a lot of issues with a lot of these metas revolving around spawns and very quick cycle decks. There's just not a whole lot for the Lava Hound to be doing in terms of value. It needs a buff to improve its survivability and actually add value, so people actually can consider risking that 7 elixir push, which currently is quite easy to counter. Some of the things I do recommend for the Lava Hound is actually, again, more HP, making it harder to remove, and also upon death, buff the lava pups. Maybe make pups spawn slightly stronger, give them some HP, some extra damage, or maybe spawn more pups just to be able to do a lot more damage. Or maybe give it a small little death blast. That would be pretty cool, kind of like a little bomb that when you take them out, it does a little mini explosion and maybe do a little bit of damage, especially good up against spawn decks where they're constantly just spawning units. This could be pretty decent and really give a slow deck a little bit of wave clear, which would be really nice to have. And that would definitely make Lava Hound plus Balloon a legit threat again, which would really make that deck very, very strong again. The next card we're going to be taking a look at is the Spirit Empress. Now, the Spirit Empress has the air form and also the ground form. One of the coolest units in the game, hands down, by far one of my favorite cards in Clash Royale. Such an extremely awesome card, very difficult to balance, but provides such great versatility. So awesome. Extremely sad to see that it's a 1% usage rate. The card just does not provide enough. I think 6 elixir is way too high for the card on its air form. It just doesn't do nearly enough. Its 3 elixir ground form actually does pretty decent. It's pretty cool. Doesn't hit as hard as it used to. Obviously, when Spirit Empress was really strong a few months ago, it was doing a lot more work. I think they just completely nerfed it to the ground, and I hate when Supercell does this. I understand a card being broken is bad for the meta, but also deleting it from the map is equally as horrible, and especially with such an amazing mechanic as the Spirit Empress having 2 different forms and 2 different elixir costs. They could have easily made a few nerfs to make this card a little less broken, but also still continuing to be a strong legendary card. Some of the changes they could do to her is increase her air form damage or ground form damage, or just both altogether, so her damage becomes more threatening rather than mediocre. It's very important for this unit to be doing damage, especially if you're committing 6 elixir. It is a lot of elixir to not be getting a whole lot. One of the things I do recommend is maybe they can grant a small passive buff. So if you're in your air form and your target is air, 10 to 15% extra damage. And if you're in ground form and your target is a ground troop, you could be getting 10 to 15% extra damage. That would be pretty cool because it would be very specific onto what you're playing and giving you those extra bonuses. So it would make your counter push a lot more thought out and have a lot more strategy behind it. I think that's a pretty cool option for it, and it would just give the Spirit Empress a lot more identity. So when it's in the air, it wants that air superiority and wants to be stronger. If it's on the ground, it's also giving that strong melee battle and making the unit a lot more viable, and maybe a few other buffs might be better. Maybe give it some splash. One of the biggest reasons why Spirit Empress is not as strong in this meta is because it really doesn't have any splash. Being single target is really rough right now, especially when everyone's just playing splash cards constantly. You want to make sure you have some splash. Maybe on her melee form she could have splash, and then on her air form just have that extra little bit of damage would come a really long way. And now, last but not least, we're going to be taking a look at Battle Healer. The Battle Healer has historically been considered a very weak card. It's very unreliable. It doesn't really provide a lot of damage. However, on Elixir Golem decks, it really goes ham. It just pairs really well with the Elixir Golem, and it's pretty much one of the few only decks you're going to be seeing the Battle Healer. It's really sad to see they can make so much work out of the Battle Healer, and they're just not able to do it. They're not able to find a way to balance this card to make it viable in another type of deck, because you can really use the Battle Healer in beatdown decks, but it doesn't work as well. It feels like a lot of commitment for Elixir for a card that's not really pumping out a lot of healing, and it doesn't really do a whole lot of damage. It doesn't even have splash. There's a lot of things that are going completely against the Battle Healer, and they need to make some huge buffs to make this card actually viable. Even if they tone down the healing a little bit and give it some splash, or maybe the ability to actually provide more value, would be pretty cool. Some of the things I recommend is increasing the heal per unit or the frequency. Maybe make her heal slightly more per hit, or heal every 1.3 seconds instead of 1.5 seconds, making healing more meaningful and actually making pushes a lot stronger and actually noticeable on what she's actually doing in the fight, rather than just pumping out a little bit of healing here and there. Then also on the heal, you can expand the radius so she heals actually all nearby units rather than just 1 or 2. Make her a support healer, give her some more HP. Maybe a support healer tank would be pretty cool, and maybe just completely remove damage from her and make her a heal only unit and just buff the healing up a ton. I think that would be pretty cool, because at the end of the day, it's going to be like a tank. It's going to be hovering down the lane with your tanks, completely keeping them all healed up in an AoE. I think it would be pretty cool. Let me know in the comments what you guys would do and what changes you guys would make for these cards to be viable, and which card you would really like to see again. For me personally, the Phoenix is a card I really want to see in the meta again. I really do miss this card being viable. It is one one of my favorite cards in the game, as well as the Spirit Empress. I really want to see those two getting a big buff, bring them back to the meta, and continue to have fun with these cards. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.